A real-life crime that derailed an entire movie. A uniquely disturbing balloon animal. Even the most intense horror movies have to draw the line somewhere. Exceeding expectations, The Meg wasn't the disaster it easily could have been. While not exactly a critical darling, The Meg performed well enough to merit a sequel, the forthcoming Meg 2: The Trench, which will be helmed by Kill List director Ben Wheatley. An ideal popcorn movie, The Meg had a hard road getting to theaters, eventually becoming a US-China co-production. Consequently, there were a lot of hands involved all the way through to ensure The Meg performed well in both countries. One of the clearest decisions was making The Meg PG-13. While fans of the source material were likely disappointed to see their favorite giant shark neutered for profits, the decision doesn't hamper the film that much. An R-rated cut would certainly be cool, but according to director John Turteltaub, audiences will never have a chance to see it. In an exclusive interview with Bloody Disgusting, Turteltaub recounts plans for a much more violent megalodon, with some scenes either being filmed or in the beginning stages of visual effects development. As Turteltaub explained, it's too fun a movie to not let people who don't like blood and people who are under, say, 14 years old into the theater. He later explains that within the constraints of modern filmmaking, those few scenes filmed still aren't available, since the cost of completing the VFX simply wouldn't be worth it.
Oh, how do you like that? That was a serious man versus nature moment. Just glad things went our way.
Even avowed fans of certain movies can learn a little tidbit that completely recontextualizes their attitude toward one of their favorites. There's no denying Ridley Scott's Alien is an absolute masterpiece, and one of the scariest films ever made. Scott's attempt to make a haunted house movie in space, swapping ghosts for a nasty, slimy alien, is historically effective. Pioneering a long-standing and ongoing franchise, the first Alien was a little xenomorph that could. Only it almost didn't, if Scott's originally scripted ending had been used. In both the theatrical and director's cuts, Sigourney Weaver's Ellen Ripley defeats the xenomorph before entering stasis, setting up the events of James Cameron's Aliens. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Ridley Scott revealed his original, brutal ending that had executives threatening to fire him if he proceeded with the grim plan. In her final battle with the xenomorph, Ripley was poised to lose. The alien was to strike at her, impaling her space helmet and ripping her head clean off. It would have been a brutal way to end the film, and it probably would have killed the franchise too.
It's got a wonderful defense mechanism. You don't dare kill it.
George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead is one of the greatest zombie movies ever made. Full of gory deaths, sick social commentary, and plenty of undead tension, the film continues to influence zombie cinema to this day. While Night of the Living Dead kindled the fire, Dawn of the Dead ignited it. In Dawn of the Dead, survivors of a zombie outbreak barricade themselves in a shopping mall, taking on both consumerism and the undead as they endeavor to survive for as long as possible. In the filmed ending, Peter and Fran successfully escape the mall by helicopter. As outlined by Little White Lies, Romero originally scripted a much darker conclusion that would have seen Peter taking his own life off-screen. Fran, now without hope, would have thrust her head into the helicopter's spinning blades. Speculatively, Romero was said to be so attached to the characters by the time they began to film the end that he couldn't in good conscience have them killed so brutally. Disparate accounts exist as to whether the ending was shot, though as it stands, Fran and Peter survive and fly off into an uncertain, zombie-filled future. The King Kong cinematic universe is no stranger to deleted scenes. Peter Jackson's 2005 revitalization of the iconic fantasy features a lengthy deleted scene that sees the core cast battling a monstrous, piranha-like creature in the rivers of Skull Island. The scene is available on YouTube, with close to finished audio and visuals, though the sequence was unfortunately excised from the theatrical cut. Perhaps most infamous, however, is the missing spider pit from Miriam C. Cooper and Ernest B. Shosak's 1933 original. While Jackson would pay homage to the sequence almost a century later, the original scene remains the subject of intense scrutiny and speculation. For the uninitiated, the original 1933 film had planned a spider pit sequence that would see Jack Driscoll and company falling into a pit of arachnoid creatures after King Kong shakes them from a log. In the release cut, the film seamlessly transitions to Jack's escape from the pit, with the other sailors presumably dying from the fall. The plan, however, was to have them devoured by spiders living at the bottom of the pit. Some speculate the scene was scrapped before filming, while others contend footage does exist, though it was scrapped after test audiences deemed it too brutal. Whether it exists or not, it's definitely interesting that, at some point, the 1933 Fay Wray masterpiece might well have been considerably more bloodthirsty. Slender Man certainly had its 15 minutes, but much like the creepypasta phenomenon itself, the ghoulish monster is a mid-aughts artifact, a digital specter of online urban legends and chat room spook shows. It would have made a lot of sense for studios to capitalize on the craze when Slender Man was in the zeitgeist, with web series like Marble Hornets and the Slender game to propel its momentum. However, that didn't happen, and the Slender Man feature arrived too little, too late, with the added controversy of releasing in an environment where Slender Man was in the news for very different reasons. According to Bloody Disgusting, Screen Gems also radically reworked Slender Man. First, in order to gain a more teen-friendly tone, David Burke's screenplay was rewritten, scrapping any more mature content for more accessible PG-13 blood and gore. Compounding the problems was a real-life case of a Slender Man stabbing. Both Sony and Screen Gems opted to cut several key scenes, including a few glimpsed in Slender Man's trailer, to sidestep the controversy of ostensibly exploiting a real-life crime. As Bloody Disgusting contends, the combination of script changes and scene cuts results in a movie that doesn't feel much like a movie at all. Whatever Slender Man's legacy should have been, this is certainly not it. Much like the first Terrifier, Damien Leone's Terrifier 2 revels in brutality. So much so, the sequel had audiences walking out of the theater, sick to their stomachs because of the violence on display.
Maybe excused.
As brutal as Terrifier 2 is, there's one line that even Leone seems reluctant to cross, and it involves a certain bit of male anatomy. In the release cut, Art the Clown stabs Jeff directly in the genitals. It's a brutal scene, and audiences might wonder how the graphic death could have been any worse. In an interview with Variety, Leone remarked how the scene was originally scripted differently, with Art actually using the severed organ for a balloon animal. Leone passed on the idea once filming began, worried the death was taking things considerably too far. It was likely the right call, too. Despite the ultra-violence and 138-minute runtime, Terrifier 2 was a staggering success. There's a delicate balance with making a slasher of this violent scale work, and balloon animal genitalia might have been a bridge too far.